Hello, you're listening to the Close Encounters podcast. Welcome to episode number 8. Yes, we are back after an unintentional break. Sometimes life just gets in the way. But in this episode, we will cover some of the interesting news articles I found over the past week. And then I'll be speaking to a fantastic brother and sister team from the United States. They host a podcast of their own and have some of their own experiences to share. You don't want to miss that. Unfortunately, though, we had a couple of technical glitches during the recording. The introduction seems to be a little bit messed up somehow, and then I had somebody with the audacity to call me halfway through the interview. Madness. So apologies for that. Unfortunately, I couldn't really edit that too well. But, without any further delay, let us go straight into the news with the section of That's What I Call News. Yes, so this is the section that I call That's What I Call News. It's my selection of the interesting and paranormal things that I found around the world over the past week. And I guess we can get it started off with the footage of a jellyfish UFO from 2008 has just been released. You can find this on YouTube, and footage leaked by filmmaker and UFO investigator Jeremy Corbell appears to show an unidentified flying object being dubbed the jellyfish UFO due to its unusual appearance. The footage shows an object that to me looks similar to the Imperial probe droid that we first seen in The Empire Strikes Back casually glide over a US joint operations base in Iraq. It is the latest video to set the UFO community abuzz. I suppose it's akin to the famous Tic Tac UFO that was released a couple of years ago. And I've seen this footage, and I must say it is rather astonishing. The object, officially designated a UAP by the US Department of Defense, was seen traversing the secure compound before reportedly being observed making a controlled descent, in quotes, into a body of water, and after about 17 minutes, I was going to say 15, but it's 17 minutes, emerged from the water and shot off at an incredible speed. You've got to see this footage for yourself if you haven't already. It is absolutely phenomenal. And if any of you would like to see it, of course, as always, a link will be provided in the show notes and can be found on our Facebook page. Moving on to naturalsociety.com, research breakthrough on weight loss by the North Carolina State University. Now, if you are one of many who has set a New Year's resolution to shift those extra pounds and you're already struggling, then this might be the solution for you. Professor and nutrition specialist Caroline Dunn from the North Carolina University and a team of researchers studied the effects of mindful eating over the course of 15 weeks. And it found it had an effective method, or it was an effective method, for losing weight without sacrificing your favourite foods. Now, word probably already sounds too good to be true. The 15-week program encourages participants to focus on various aspects of what they're consuming, from savouring the taste, the texture, and planning your meal times. The only caveat to this method is that they insist that you focus on eating your food and nothing else. So you're being divested of distractions of the television, phones, music, etc. You have to focus solely on eating your food and the experience that goes with it. I must say it's an interesting take on it, and if you're interested in reading more or giving it a go, the link will be provided in the show notes. Let us go over to the West Coast in the United States, Coast to Coast AM. Coming back to UFOs, a private pilot has reported seeing a 30-foot tall triangular UFO. Now, in December of last year, a recording of a conversation between an air traffic control tower and a private pilot flying from Pittsburgh to Maryland in the United States has revealed that the pilot has witnessed, or he did witness, a fast-travelling triangular-shaped UFO that was approximately 30 feet tall. The audio clip, which can be found on YouTube and included in the link in the show notes, allows us to hear a clear description from what the pilot had saw. Though observed from a distance, the pilot felt compelled to report it and has stated that he had taken a picture, although I've yet to find the picture that was allegedly taken. Haven't been able to find it yet, but maybe that will materialize at some point in the near future. Although, interestingly, in the YouTube comments, a user going by the name of Adam Wright 3346 has claimed that he lives right in the area the incident had taken place, and shortly after that incident, some US Air Force jets were active in the area. Interesting story, and I would encourage you to check it out on Coast to Coast AM. And finally, we go over to space.com with the title, "The First Private Mission to Venus is to Search for Signs of Life." Now, if you remember, at the turn of the decade, it was announced that potential signs of life had been detected high in the atmosphere of Venus. Well, in the year 2025, Rocket Lab, a private rocket launch provider, had stated that they intend to fly a mission to Venus in the hopes of confirming the sulfuric acid droplets in the atmosphere can stably host complex biochemicals that are needed to trigger life. So, while not quite the Phoenicians as described by George Adamski, it certainly will be groundbreaking news and a groundbreaking moment for our sciences if this is confirmed to be true. As always, the link will be provided in the show notes below. And that is the end of the news section. Let us move on to the interview. Okay, so I have a brother and sister team all the way from Austin in Texas, and they are the hosts of the We Believe Do You podcast, which explores the accounts of real people regarding their paranormal experiences and their theories behind it. You can catch their new episodes of their podcast each Wednesday on major podcast platforms, and I have got them both here. Eric and Michelle, how do you do? It's still early morning. Yeah, I was just going to say it must still be early morning for you. Yeah, it's coming towards the late afternoon here. Massive time difference. But thank you for joining me, going out of your way to be here. I'm aware that you've been both interested in the paranormal for some time now, and most, if not all of us, have had something that piqued our interest in the paranormal, like a sighting or television program, etc. What was it that piqued your interest?
I think we always mention this. Our watching Unsolved Mysteries with our uncle. I don't know if you all had that in the UK, but it was this program that it dealt with true crime, it dealt with UFOs, it dealt with paranormal encounters and stuff like that. And it was a show that we would watch with him during the summers, or if we were sick and we were staying with him while our parents were at work. We'd be watching that, and it was like just one of the daily routines during the summer. That was one of the shows that we would watch, and I think that was probably one of the things. And then the other thing was, later in the evening, whenever X-Files would come on, we would watch that with our father. So that's kind of where our, I guess, interest for the paranormal peaked.
Yeah, I mean, the X-Files, I didn't watch that until very later in life. Something that I've seen now and again if I was channel hopping as a kid. Even the opening credits scared the hell out of me. You know, that ghostly figure walking down the hallway really scared me. But yeah, it wasn't until later years when it was free on Amazon Prime. I thought, well, let's go on a marathon. That's what it was. And Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the same thing. It was a lot of, but even the, kids channels like Nickelodeon, we had Are You Afraid of the Dark? And, in elementary school reading books like Goosebumps. But I mean, I feel like at that point, the paranormal bug, we had already been bit by the paranormal bug. So once I started to learn how to read, then those were the, books I was checking out. Did it have to do with a ghost? Was there an alien in it? Like paranormal cryptids. Those were my favorite books to read. So yeah, I'm not sure what about it in particular. I guess the mystery of it kind of just, I wanted answers, and I wanted to read all I could about it as well.
I think that is what draws a lot of people in, isn't it? It's the sort of the mystery or the things that can't be seen, the unexplained. I mean, that's one of the things that certainly drew me into the paranormal. It just it ignites the imagination, you know, and it can be really exciting. And a lot of people love to be scared. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to be scared. You
Yeah.
know, I myself, and you know, things like that don't really scare me as much. There's a few things that do, but everyone goes for the thrill, don't they? Yeah. So, have either of you had any paranormal experiences yourselves? You know, that you'd like to share with us, or is it just an interest?
No. Do you want to go first, Eric?
Yeah, it's been a lot of paranormal experiences, but I guess to kind of go off of our show, the one of the first ones that I can remember very vividly uh, was so actually in this room, me and Michelle, well, you guys can't see us, but in the room that I'm recording in right now, Michelle and I used to share this bedroom as kids, and we had twin beds, and I remember her bed was the one that was a little bit closer to the door, but I had like a more, you know, I could see the door and see out the room through that door. And I remember I was laying in bed, and the door, we used to sleep with the door open. And I remember kind of waking up and still kind of being in a groggy state. And all of a sudden, I just saw this figure standing in the doorway. It was the best way I can describe it is it did have like, I guess, a person's silhouette almost, or like just maybe like, you know, that generic ghost with like the white sheet ghost type of thing.
Yeah.
I guess picture that, and then but instead of being white, it was like just colors. Like if you were looking at the light spectrum and it's just going all the colors of the spectrum in like this rainbow bright, you know, light. But it scared me because I was a kid. I was maybe 10, 11 years old, and I was freaking out because I was thinking, what is this? And I remember trying to call out to my parents, um, and I couldn't get my voice would not, it wasn't working. I was trying to scream and I couldn't, and I was just paralyzed. I guess people could say that it was sleep paralysis. But I remember I was finally able to yell, and I called out for my parents, and I remember I heard my parents get up out of bed and start running towards our room. And then as soon as my dad kind of like burst through the doorway, uh, and I guess walked through what I was seeing, it kind of just like disappeared. And they came to me and they were like, "Are you okay? What's going on? This and that." And I want to say that I told them what I saw, and I can't remember what their response would have been, but I know that's the first one that really sticks in my head. I'm sure there was other things before that, but that's the main one that I can remember that I know I'll never forget.
Like, did you feel threatened by its presence, or was it literally just a
No.
moment of just freeze, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily that I was like it caused me to be afraid. It's just because I didn't know what it was, and I'm seeing this figure standing in my doorway when we're not supposed to, you know, we're supposed to be asleep. It was the middle of the night. That's what scared me. So yeah, it's not necessarily that it was creating that fear. It's just, I guess, because it was unknown and it wasn't supposed to be there, that freaked me out. And I mean, that's still something to this day that I kind of deal with. Like if I've seen things that aren't supposed to be there, I really have to kind of fight that panic, you know, like urge to start freaking out. Yeah.
I suppose it goes back to what we were saying earlier, whenever we were talking on your podcast about sort of similar to my experience. You know, seeing something that shouldn't be there scares the hell out of you, and the first thing that you do is call for your parents. You know,
Of course.
But although mine wasn't colourful, mine was just like black or shadowy. You know,
Right.
Fascinating that we've had like a sort of similar experience in similar circumstances. Woken
Hmm.
up from a sleep just to look out the window. In my case, that was looking out the window. But that's absolutely
Right.
terrifying. I would think if you don't know
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
is, especially as a kid, my God, what would you do? But
Hmm.
what about you, Michelle? Because I know you've been into the
Yeah.
paranormal longer than your brother.
Yeah. So I struggle, I guess, with this, and part of me also is like all the paranormal things that I had happen as an adult. Part of me wants to say like, oh, it was just a dream, but I think that comes from a little bit of fear or admitting that something actually happened. Uh, but this one, they're just so clear that it's like, how can it? Yeah. Anyway, so I guess my very first paranormal experience that I could remember was, and somehow I got very nervous, even though we've been recording already for like an hour and a half. So apologies if my voice is a little shaky. But we had this two-story house, and I had this doll that I was like a Barbie doll I was looking for, and I couldn't find her. Um, and we had this schnauzer at the time that if we left toys on the floor, she would just destroy them, chew them up. And that was kind of the case, is what ended up happening with this doll that I was looking for. And I saw the doll at the bottom of the steps. Like literally looked like a movie with a spotlight on it and everything kind of thing with the light that we had at the bottom of the steps. So I go down, I pick her up, and she did look a little creepy now because her head was all mangled and whatnot. And then I heard "help me" like in a female voice, and my child brain thought that it was the doll speaking. So I threw it and like ran up the stairs. And at the time, my brother and my cousin were in the bedroom that Eric is talking about, actually, and they were playing video games. So I like burst into the door and was like, "Why did you guys do that? You scared me." Uh, why? And they're completely confused. They have absolutely no idea what I was talking about. And the other thing too is that there was no way that I wouldn't have seen them get back into the room, sit down, and like sit in front of the TV with the controllers because of the way our staircase is built and stuff. Um, so one, I feel like Eric would have admitted to this by now. Second, it was a female's voice, and now I'm thinking it wasn't obviously so much the doll that was speaking, but just a disembodied voice that I was hearing that happened to coincide with me picking up the doll, or because I was by myself downstairs. Um, and I mean, we'll get into it. The house that we grew up into, we've we've had lots of things happen. So we do believe that there is something in the house. What it was, like, we have no idea. We've never really tried to figure it out. But I mean, we've had quite a few. But I think that was probably the first one, is just hearing a female disembodied voice saying "help me," and then thinking it was my doll. But I don't think it was at this point. Because she wasn't some creepy porcelain doll. It was just like a regular old Barbie doll, just had been mangled by a dog.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know of dolls being capable of speaking.
Yeah.
Um, unless it's like Toy Story or something like that. They come alive when we don't look at them, and But I don't know what would be scarier. Seeing something that you don't know, or hearing something coming from somewhere you can't explain.
Yeah.
It's both equally as terrifying when you think about it. You know, how did you cope with that? Like the day after, I mean, I'd be terrified to go back into that room if I was that age. You know, what was your coping mechanism to sort of go back your normal routine in your room or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like seeing that, I can't remember. I mean, I don't think I really, I personally don't remember having any issues going back, but and it might have been that my parents were just like, oh, you were just dreaming or something like that. The typical thing that parents say. Like I said, I can't remember what they said, but it must have been something like that, because I don't remember having any issues coming back in. And I think the fact that my sister was in the room with me as well, like it kind of, you know, comforted me a little bit. Well, granted, she is younger than me, but uh, sometimes for me, just being alone in a room in the dark was enough to terrify me as a kid. You know what I mean? So I don't think it was much of an issue, but I do know that I was very afraid of the dark up until my, I would say, early 20s. As embarrassing as it is to admit that, that was the case for me, especially with as many things as I had seen, heard, and felt, um, to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
I
if we're
mean,
kids, yeah, we do have a really active imagination, don't we? And it does run away with us.
Hmm.
And it doesn't really help with the fear. I mean, I was afraid of the dark up until probably my mid-teens, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Michelle, I'd cut you off there whenever I was just reminiscing there. But yeah, please carry on.
oh, no, no. No, I was just gonna say, because it was a great question of like, how did you guys deal after having these experiences? And I was thinking about that too. Like um, a couple of other things that happened in that room as well. I remember waking up one night and then feeling like an impression in the bed as if someone had sat. We had kind of lost a cat, I think, right around that time. And I remember a friend of mine trying to make me feel better, saying that it was my cat that came and laid in my bed, even though she never did that. But yeah, I remember, waking up and seeing like the indention as if someone was sitting at the end of at the feet of my bed, basically, or the foot of my bed. And another time I used to sleep with a big like stuffed animal dog, like maybe about almost 3 feet. Like it was pretty big. And one, time in the middle of the night, it's hanging over the edge of my bed. So I go to pull it to, bring it closer to me because it's hanging off the bed. And when I go to pull it, something pulled back, uh, which would mean that it was like under my bed or below my bed or something. So I just let it go and I dropped it and like rolled over all the way to the opposite end of my bed to get as far away from whatever pulled back. Um, and I think a lot of it was just like, I'm just going to pretend this didn't happen, is why we were able to be okay with sleeping in the room and staying in there. I don't know, I'm speaking for you, Eric, but I think that was my way of coping with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume like that's what it is. It was just kind of just like, oh well, we're just imagining it or whatever. When the ladies that would help, take care of us, that lived in our house, would start talking about things that they experienced, then that's when it was kind of hard because again, you're a kid, you're hearing these things and you're like, oh my God, I've never experienced that, but now you're terrified of going downstairs in the middle of the night.
Did this happen, both your encounters, did this happen in the same house and around the same
Oh
time?
yeah.
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 I
Around
mean,
the same, I would say it was around the same time,
like all
because
throughout elementary kind of
for
school
you,
years. Yeah.
because I was when you were in elementary, I think I was already in middle school. But yeah, this is actually the house that I'm in right now is the childhood house that I grew up in. So this is the same house.
And
Yeah.
is there anything that happens there now when you're living there?
Uh, when I don't cleanse the house, it can happen. But there was a time where things were happening very much, like a lot more frequently. Um, it was actually I had to have Michelle come in and cleanse the house because uh, now thinking back to it, it could have been like poltergeist-esque activity. I mean, there wasn't like stuff like constantly banging around the house, but there was definitely energies that were felt. Like I would go, like again, downstairs for us was always kind of a taboo place to go to, just because of the stories that these ladies would tell us, hearing whistling, or singing and seeing things. Our grandfather uh, actually stayed in one of the room downstairs for a little bit, and he was very much into the occult and using Ouija boards, but for I'm assuming not very good things. And growing up, or we never had a relationship with him, but you know, when my father was growing up, he was very into dark things. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But Michelle at this point had already moved out of the house. She had gone to Austin. She moved. So I live in Brownsville again, which is at the very southern tip of Texas. Michelle moved to Austin, which is about 5.5, 6 hours away. And eventually my mother ended up moving up there as well. She was going to be retiring from her job down here and she wanted to make a change. So she ended up leaving. And that's why I stayed in the house. And, I was like, well, why get an apartment when, get a house, But I would always have these like just horrible, horrible nightmares. Horrible in the sense that they didn't feel like they were dreams or nightmares. They felt real. And they always happened in the house. And this was my room back then. And I had my bed in the corner of the room, and in the dreams I would wake up and the bed would be shaking, or I would be getting like if something was trying to pull me under the bed. I remember one of them, that was happening in this room, and I like jumped off the bed in the dream, opened the door, ran to the other room, and jumped into that bed, and then that bed started shaking. I remember, I don't know if it was in that same dream, or it might have been a different one, where I saw my mother like walking down the stairs towards all the way down to the first floor. And I remember running after her because I was going to tell her, not to go down there because of whatever it was that was down there. And I get down there and she's not there. And the garage door was to my back. I turned to where the garage door was to my back and I saw the door to that room open. And then I kind of wanted to stand my ground and tell whatever it was that this isn't, you can't do this. You can't, I'm not afraid of you type of thing. And I start walking towards the room and I just remember the door slamming shut. And when the door slammed shut, I kind of flew back and slammed up against the garage door and like fell forward. And I just remember being completely terrified at that point. I was trying to be brave, but when that happened, I was completely terrified. And I started praying the Our Father. And I woke up. I woke up from the nightmare, and these were dreams that were happening frequently. And I so then it was when me and Michelle started getting more into the like spiritual side, side of things, and we were talking, and that's actually what kind of got me into the metaphysical, like spiritual side of things. And I told her, you know what, can you just come and do a cleansing of the house? And I feel like I'm going on forever now, but she came over and she started to cleanse the house, and I was walking around with her, and she did we did put some stones on the outside and the four corners of the home, and she did everything, and we buried the ashes, and we did everything. We go up to the top floor of the house, or the second floor of the house, and kind of just sit in the living room. And I remember my mom was sitting in a chair in front, and I guess we were in a circle, triangle. She was like kind of to my right. Michelle was to my left, and Michelle just started kind of doing a prayer and stuff like that. As we were sitting in the circle, I was sitting with my legs crossed on the floor, and I just closed my eyes and I was kind of trying to just concentrate, meditate, pray. And as Michelle is doing this prayer, she's telling me to imagine these angels cleaning my house, putting like a light throughout the house and taking away all the darkness. So I was doing that, and as I'm doing that, I was having trouble doing it in the downstairs area in my head, and then all of a sudden I just start feeling like a lot of weight on my shoulders, and I was physically like slouching. Yeah. And so I would straighten myself up, and then she continued, and I remember just again, just my shoulders started to drop and I started to slouch forward as I'm trying to, you know, do this, that, imagine this, that she was, what she was trying to tell me to imagine. And I don't remember if I started getting emotional before or after she started praying on me. I just remember having, and I remember telling her I can't do the downstairs, and like she could see me kind of like slouching forward.
Hunching, yeah.
Yeah, and so she starts praying on me, and as soon as she starts doing that, like I just start bawling. And I don't know where that emotion came from or what, but I just started crying, and um it was very, 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 very intense. Once she prayed over me, I was able to finish that, like, clearing out the house. And after that, that was it. I didn't have any more really bad experiences in the home or anything like that. So I don't know. I know my wife has like felt certain things, and I haven't cleansed the house in a while. So I was playing video games recently, and I almost felt like I felt like somebody poked me in the, like, on the back. I haven't told her this, and I hope she's not hearing.
Don't tell
So
her.
so I probably need to cleanse very soon here. But yeah, I mean, ever since Michelle cleansed the house, though, I haven't felt anything negative or super crazy in the house.
Do you know, I was going to ask earlier, is there something special about that house? Was it, its history or where it's located that would cause this to be happening in your house? But I think you pretty much answered it by saying that your grandfather,
Yes.
was dabbling with in a Ouija board or something like that. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. I definitely believe that the phenomenon of the Ouija board is a real thing. I've heard so many stories from so many different people, even skeptics as well, who tried it just for a laugh, and I quote, for a laugh. And they've had nothing but bad luck and strange things happening in their houses when it never used to happen there before. But you mentioned some of the rituals, to cleanse the house and what have you. What are some of those rituals that you do?
Yeah, I mean, we were born and raised Catholic. We don't quite call ourselves Catholic, or maybe watered down Catholic. So a lot of the prayers were just, yeah, like Our Fathers and whatnot. But there's a lot of, I guess, just more intentional prayers as far as like bringing in only good, or the only thing that can stay, is like good higher vibrational beings, or beings of the light, things like that. Anything else like is not welcome here, needs to leave. Obviously, smoke cleansing is always, whether it's Palo Santo or sage. And the stones that we put were black tourmaline on the four corners on the outside of the house for protection, and then selenite inside on the four corners. Well, again, also for cleansing as well. And then I feel like when I started praying, and I'll be completely honest, like this was pretty early, not early, but felt pretty early in my trying to understand and learn, some of these practices and whatnot. So part of me felt like I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, especially when I started praying over Eric. But I just felt like something I could see. I mean, the way that his body was changing, and then when he got emotional, I could see that something was happening. And so I just let the words come out, and hopefully whatever I said made sense. And I mean, I think it did, considering it, really helped him. But I mean, I will admit, and I mean, maybe it's psychological too, because my grandfather stayed in that room, but there was something that, like, this heaviness that was always in that room. And it wasn't until after this cleansing and they kind of cleaned out that space and stuff that it does feel much lighter now. It doesn't feel the way it did before.
I suppose, a lot of it does come down to, I'm a great believer in mind over matter, to be fair. So, if you, do you visualize some of the things that you do as well? Like one of the things I do that I visualize, if I wake up sometimes thinking that there's something in the room with me or something like that, and I can't explain why sometimes, not very often, but why sometimes I feel like that. And it's always after 3 o'clock in the morning. I always visualize that there's a white, like a golden white light emanating from my heart area and just pushes out any shadows or things that I visualize in the room and keeps them out. And then I feel fine again. Are you accustomed to doing that as well? Or is that an irregular practice of yours?
I mean, for me, when I cleanse, I usually do like the smoke, and then I'll sit in a room, and wherever the last room is that I'm cleansing, I'll usually sit in that room or sit in that space and continue to pray, and again do that. Picturing that light, going throughout the entire house, just clearing out any negativity or darkness. But it is definitely that where you imagine this coming either from you or is in your surroundings. But yeah, I definitely feel, because I've done it. Like, I know it sounds kind of strange. I'm a nurse, but there have been instances where I have prayed over a patient, or just been in that and like kind of just touched their head or something like that. And so another thing that Michelle kind of got me into, I guess, was the different archangels, and each one has a different, I guess, represents something different. So for me, Raphael, or not for me, but he's a healer. So as a nurse, that's always an angel that I pray to, or I call on to help me, or guide me if I need to, or whatever it is, to protect my patients sometimes if they're going to be going in for a procedure. And I'll imagine a green light, because that color is closely associated with him. So I'll do that and imagine a green light either coming from me or just covering my patient as I'm trying to meditate or pray over them.
I suppose the green color sort of is no coincidence that it relates to like the healthcare profession as well. A lot of the times you see like pharmacies or first aid kits have got the green cross on it, So green is is associated with that, isn't it? So yeah, that's an interesting thought, actually. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, were you going to say something there, Michelle?
No, I think. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's just I just find things like this fascinating, especially when it relates to your profession as well. Like being a nurse. Now, I have an ex-girlfriend who is she lives down in Dublin, and she's like a healthcare assistant. So one step down from a nurse is what I would say. And she and other actual nurses who I know, have told me when somebody's approaching the end of their life, they're about to die for whatever reason, people have said that they've seen the patient talking or smiling to people at the end of their beds or in the room with them, people who aren't there. And they'll ask them, who are you speaking to? Or, who are you smiling at? And they'll often say, my mother and father's standing there waiting for me. Or I'm talking to my son who died, X amount of years ago. Have you ever come across anything like this, just out of interest?
Yeah, actually, yeah. One of my other stories is I used to work in a nursing home, and there was a patient whose husband, they were both in the nursing home. Her husband had just passed away, I think, maybe a few weeks or maybe even a couple months prior to that. And the other nurse that was working with me, it was her patient, so she was in there with the lady talking to her. And this lady, for some reason, even though the gentleman had already passed away, she would always get upset with the nurse and start telling her things because she thought that the nurse and her husband were, doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing and stuff. So she was very jealous of this nurse. So I don't know why one day this nurse walks in there and I was in the like a little closet next to the room, getting out some like meat, milks, some formulas for our patients who took their feedings through a G tube. Um, and she comes out, and I asked her jokingly, I was like, "Oh, what did she tell you now?" And she goes, "Oh, well, I asked her about her husband, and she said that he was here, like in the facility." And she's like, "Oh, he's here. He's walking around. He's just working." And that she was like, okay. And as she's like telling me this story, in the room across the hall from this lady's room, I see this like kind of shadow figure, like a person, but like a person, like I could see a person walking out of the room. And I just remember kind of like, I just got goosebumps thinking about it again. I turned around and saw this, I guess, figure, but as I'm turning and I'm starting to get a clear visual of whatever it was that was coming out of the room, uh, the nurse jumps towards me, terrified as well. So I turned back and I was like, "Well, did you see it?" And she goes, "No, but I saw your face, and that was enough for me." And mind you, the two men that were in that room, neither one of them like walked on their own. They needed assistance to get out of bed, so it's not like it could have been one of them. And I think over the next week or two, we ended up having 3 patients pass away. So, like, kind of putting everything together, I almost feel like her or his job or what he was doing for work was kind of like picking up some of the other patients. And I know, like, in our profession, at least when I was working in the nursing home, anytime a patient would pass away, we were always ready for 2 more to go because you typically went in threes.
3 is a magic number as well, is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of things in the supernatural happen in threes, doesn't it? Yeah, it's weird how numbers can have an effect on things as well. It really does. I mean, I've got goosebumps just listening to your story. You know, these things really, really fascinate me. They really do. I suppose a question for Michelle, actually, that I can sort of think of. Like, I'm aware you've been reading up on this subject over the years and no doubt watched various television programs and had several experiences of your own. But what would be the most surprising or, I suppose, memorable thing about the supernatural that you've learned?
Oh, that I know nothing. The more
Yeah.
questions I try and answer, I come up with 20 new ones. I think that that's a great question.
I mean, it's really picking your brains, like, you know, it's going deep
Yeah.
there. But
No, well, I
even
guess
what you've
that
said, yeah, sorry,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but even what you've said, that the more I think about it, the more I realize I don't know. I mean, that
Yeah.
speaks wonders for itself. But sorry, what were you saying?
No, I mean, I guess just that it's somehow it seems so close, like you could reach out and touch it, but it's like a tease, like you can't ever get anything answered, and it's almost like, but it's right there, like people are experiencing these things, they're having similar experiences, things that we can't explain, but we can't get science to back it because it's just there's no rhyme or reason, or you know what I mean, and it's almost frustrating, but um that same sense of like wonder and curiosity that I had as a kid, like it's very much still there, and maybe that's why I enjoy it so much, is there is a little bit of feeding that inner child and letting that imagination come out to play, but now I guess with more adult ideas as far as like physics and interdimensional things, and new ideas and topics that I wouldn't have even considered or thought about as a child.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you were saying about science there, you know, they sort of try. The thing with science nowadays in particular, they tend to try and avoid things that they can't explain or don't understand. You know, they're afraid to touch it, you know, and I guess that could be because, you know, a lot of people tend to be scared of things they can't see or understand. But is there anything that either of you, you know, find to be particularly scary when it comes to, you know, the paranormal and objects or even the unseen, I suppose?
I I think for me, I don't know if it's again those like Catholic roots that have just are so ingrained. Um, the thing that always terrifies me the most that I don't even want to play with or like watch movies of are exorcist movies or anything where of people being possessed. And again, in doing research and whatnot, part of me is like, oh, okay, probably just had seizures and they, trying to come up with some reasonable explanations. But going into like a haunted house that they have here in Austin that they have different themes, I guess. And one of them was like an exorcist kind of style theme. And I'm like, I can't bring myself to go in there for some reason. That I used to be terrified of dolls as well, but that's something that I've kind of embraced. And I have a creepy doll sitting, and I think she's lovely.
Just get that out there. She thinks
yeah.
you're nice.
yeah. But I feel like exorcisms just always kind of. I don't want to. I hate hearing audio of exorcisms happening. Like there's something about it that a line that I don't want to cross with that, I think.
It's funny that you say that because I was talking to you earlier about my friend Fra, who runs Shadowhunters Northern Ireland. And, one of the things I told you about the doll that was in the sort of glass dome there, and he made me hold it and all that sort of stuff. But on the same evening, and you've just triggered this memory as well, he showed me a video of an actual exorcism of a woman down in Dublin. I think you would love to see that. It was a weird. It's not like what you would see in the movies. It wasn't like that. And this was shot on like a mobile phone. It was recorded on it. And I'll give you a basic sort of scenario of what was happening. It was this woman standing in a gown, and she was making all these weird grunts and noises, and she had this really hoarse voice. And in one hand, she was carrying a crucifix, and in the other hand was a lit cigarette. And I can't remember what she was saying, but I think her son was recording it. And the priest has been saying to the son, don't look at her in the eyes. And I asked Fra what that was about. He says that's how sort of demons can transfer from one body to another. And she turned and looked at the camera, and her face deformed. There was no special effects or anything like that.
No.
It deformed. And then the video stopped. And I asked him, I goes, well, have you followed up on this? What's the fallout from this? And he hasn't heard anything since from it. And it was now I'm not normally sort of disturbed by videos and things like that. I mean, I can watch a horror, just as well as the next guy. As a matter of fact, there used to be a TV program here called Anatomy for Beginners, and it was this German doctor in this black hat, and he would dissect dead bodies, and he would give you lessons, and I could be sitting watching that as a teenager, scranning my dinner as I'm watching it. So I'm not normally disturbed by these sort of things, but that video itself, what I saw in it was it kept me awake that night, if I'm honest. It really, really did. It genuinely did. But Eric, what about you? Is there anything that you find to be particularly scary when it comes to the paranormal?
I think it's just because of the experiences that I've had, it's just been difficult for me to kind of. So Michelle's tried. And I want to do this, but I'm always very apprehensive about it. Is just trying to open my mind more, so I never call myself anything psychic medium, nothing like that, but I do tend to see a lot of things. I tend to hear things, and sometimes I've been touched multiple times, in the back or on the shoulder or things like that when nobody's around. So for me, that's always kind of unsettling. And I've always wanted to be able to do that more, or be able to do it and be able to see like better, I guess, or hear better. But it's just my fear would be like turning it off.
Yeah.
And I think Ouija boards. She's also talked to me about doing that. And again, growing up Catholic, we heard the Ouija board is evil and this and that. And I've changed my mind as far as it being evil, but your intent is when you're using it. And like I've mentioned in our podcast multiple times, I could probably go in there with the best of intentions, but I have very intrusive thoughts. And once we're using the board, I'm afraid that I'm going to start thinking things that I shouldn't be thinking, or thinking about, certain things that I shouldn't be thinking, and then have those things come through. So, and it's not, like, once my brain starts going, it's hard for me to stop it from thinking those things.
Yeah,
So
I think with most people, the thing that scares them most of all is definitely the Ouija board, isn't it? It's Ouija board is not something that I've tried. I don't think it's something that I would want to try, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's something that I tend to avoid as well. It's not. I guess it's not a case of being afraid of it so much. It's more. I've heard the rumors about it. I'm a little bit apprehensive. Is the best way to describe it. Do you know? I've said earlier on that I was in Austin before, and it is an amazing, vibrant city. It really is. Surely it must be home to some unusual things and paranormal happenings. Is there anywhere in Austin that like sort of stands out to you for paranormal reasons, or even if someone were to go to Austin to experience something paranormal, where would you recommend?
Yeah, it's funny. For my 30th birthday, we were actually supposed to go to Ireland, and the trip got postponed because of COVID. So instead, my boyfriend set up a private tour in a hearse to go around Austin to visit a whole bunch of haunted locations. So that was an experience. It wasn't quite Ireland, but it was pretty great.
It's probably drier than Ireland, to be fair.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah. But there's a few places there. There's a hotel downtown called the Driscoll, and that is supposedly very haunted. There's I guess a legend of a little girl who dropped her ball down this huge staircase that they have there. And in trying to run after it, she fell down those stairs, broke her neck, and now sometimes you'll see like a phantom ball rolling down the steps. I know that I can't remember his first name, but basically the person who built the hotel, there's a huge portrait painted of him like right at the entrance that you can see. He apparently walks through the halls. You can smell like tobacco, things like that. There's actually a tavern that we also visited that apparently there's a ghost, and there's actually another paranormal podcast located here in Austin that kind of covered this space. But a little girl who her mother was a lady of the night, I guess I should say, and there was this man who wanted to marry her and like wanted to whisk her away and like get her out of that life, and she wanted nothing to do with him. So in a jealous rage, he killed her and the daughter, and they actually found the shoes of the little girl in between the walls when they were doing the renovations. And so it said that she and her mother haunt the place, but or at least in this podcast that I was listening to, apparently they're almost like not in the same plane, so they can't actually be together, the mother and the daughter. Like they know that each other is there, but they can't. Yeah, so it's like super sad, I guess. And there's this other darker entity that hangs around there, kind of in the shadows. And yeah, I believe the podcast is the Night Owl podcast. The Night Owl podcast, if anyone wants to listen to that. But there is, I will say, this one last place that I personally felt something. I guess it's a place called Pioneer Farms, and it's this plot of land that they've actually brought older homes from kind of all over the United States, but 18th century kind of old homes, and have put them on this land. But this land was actually a place where this one specific Native American tribe used to, I guess, migrate to, and would come because it was by a creek and the land was great and whatnot. So I think that has a little bit to do with it. But I remember I can't remember what I was there for. It was not any sort of paranormal sort of situation, but I remember this one building kind of almost seeing, I guess, with my third eye, because I knew he wasn't there, but I could almost envision a type of man with like suspenders and a specific type of hat. I guess kind of like the Peaky Blinders, whatever, like the paperboy hats, I think is what they're called. And he had a very distinct look, and I was like, I don't know why I'm seeing this guy in the door frame, and I didn't think anything of it, and whatever, went on with the tour, whatever it is that we did. And we finally got to that building and we went inside, and there is a horse and carriage, or the carriage portion of it, and on that carriage was one of those paperboy hats, and a picture of a man in suspenders, like with the hat. Basically what I had been seeing before I actually went into the building, there's a photo of that type of man there, basically. So I'm like, I don't know what that, because like Eric, I don't think that I'm a psychic or a medium or have any sort of special abilities or anything, other than maybe sensitivities to feeling like someone's in the room or feeling like someone's watching you, like those kinds of things. But this time I felt like I could see, but not with my physical eyes, if that makes sense. But yeah.
So it sounds like Austin is no short of places to be going to
There's
visit
so many,
when it comes to that.
Definitely.
It intrigues me that you were able to, like a sort of foresight before you went into that building, and you'd seen this in your mind, the image of that man that was in there. That sort of stuff intrigues me as well. I can't even come up with an explanation for it. It is definitely unexplained, you know. But we'll talk a little bit about your podcast actually now that I think about it. So your podcast has been in existence now since late 2020. Am I correct?
Yes.
Either way, you know, from the time of recording this, you've no less than 151 episodes on your site, which is an amazing achievement in itself. And you've no doubt interviewed several people over these years. And are there any of those stories that made you think, wow, or something that you find particularly chilling or memorable from your guests?
We've interviewed so many people. I think for me, I feel like and I always say this, and she always she always feels like that's not the case, but she's just knows so much more. I think she just like listens to so many podcasts and just like goes deep diving into different topics. So she knows, like, she has a plethora of knowledge on different things, spiritual, aliens, UFOs, everything, cryptids. And for me, this podcast, is, I get to learn. So, I think a couple of the guests that have impacted me the most, just by what they were taught, like what they were speaking about, not necessarily maybe the experience that they may have had, which they did have experiences that were also very hard to explain and very impactful. But there was a guest, Craig Lefebvre. I remember we had to cut his episode into a two-parter because I think we went for like 3 hours with him.
Yeah.
God damn.
My head hurt.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
my head hurt at the end of the recording, not because we went for so long, but just everything that basically then they were both discussing. I was just kind of silent for most of it because I had no idea what they were talking about, and I was just trying to absorb everything that they were saying. And then I think the other guest that we had on that kind of had the same effect on me was Wajid. He also brought up some topics very similar to Craig's, but that also kind of just blew my mind. And those, for me, those are the episodes that are very impactful to me, because I'm learning things and
I mean, I would agree. When you asked that question, the first two people that kind of popped into my head were also Craig and Wajid. So I can second those. And I think the reason they're so interesting was they were bringing in topics that we hadn't really thought about or discussed yet. I feel like he was probably one of our first like alien experiencers.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, both
yes, Craig. Yeah, yeah.
Craig first, and then Wajid, and that's when I think I kind of took a cue of like, oh wait, I forgot how much I enjoyed, aliens and UFOs and things like that, and we've kind of gone down those rabbit holes as well again. But I would agree with Eric is Craig and Wajid. If anybody would like to go listen to what they had to say.
Definitely. I'll be posting a link to your podcast in our show notes. So you should have, hopefully, a few people going over and discovering you for the first time, because some of the accounts that I've listened to on there so far, I'm not going to claim that I've listened to all of them, but 151 is a lot to get through. But I've listened to quite a few of them, and you've had some really interesting people there. There are no doubt a load of skeptics out there who would try to poo-poo and debunk anything paranormal. Have you ever encountered this? And if so, or I guess even if you haven't, how would you deal with skepticism or criticism from others?
I feel are we thinking of the same guest or what? Or...
Oh, no. I don't know if you were talking about in our personal life or on the show.
Either or. I mean, if you were talking to people about some of your personal encounters and people, immediately say, oh, you must have been drunk, or, that stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or even from people on the show as well. How would you best deal with the sort of skepticism or the negative response or criticism from others?
I think for me personally, I won't share unless I feel safe enough that like the other person I'm talking to is willing to have an open mind about it. But I guess I'm distinctly remembering this one this one guest that we had on in particular that later on we realized like he was coming for a fight or like a debate of some kind to try and say like this is bullshit and like have us be angry about it. I mean, he still came on and talked about his topic, and we were super open-minded and like we're like, yeah, like what do you have to share? And I think that taking that approach of like, listen, you're gonna believe what you believe, I'm gonna believe what I believe, as long as you're not being too much of an asshole. Like, I'm not going to try and change your... Sorry, there I go with the colorful language.
No, you can crack on. I mean, it makes it more entertaining, to be fair.
Yeah, like as long as, people can respect or be respectful, we'll hear them out as long as they're... And hopefully they will hear us out as well. But it's just about having an open mind and taking things with a grain of salt and allowing people to share and not be a jerk about it. There's definitely been guests that we had on that I've been like, I don't really align with this, but that's okay. Just kind of move on from there. But yeah, I think just kind of just be kind and be open-minded and be careful of what you're sharing with who you're sharing it with.
Yeah. I think with that guest too, it was kind of ironic that he had ideas about what we believed when some of the stuff that he was sharing and believed, and I don't think we really challenged it. I think after the fact it was like, why didn't we challenge him on this? Because the thing is, we're not trying to debate people either. We're our podcast is more about giving people a platform to share their experiences, and that's why Michelle said, like, when people have come on and we don't really agree with what they're saying, we'll either try and, okay, let's move on from this and go somewhere else, or just let them speak, and okay, once that's done, let's continue, with something else, because we don't want to put anybody down. I guess the way that we feel is everybody has had an experience, and we can't say whether that experience was real or not, because for that person, that experience was very real.
So we weren't there.
Yeah. So that's why, and it was like ancient civilizations and what he was bringing up, and how the like some people are trying to present information, but they're being basically blackballed by the like uh, communities or this like that actually do research into these old civilizations, and how that it's not alien anyway. uh so our like I guess the way I feel about it, or the way I think about it, is like Michelle said, I usually try not to share things with people who I don't feel comfortable with, or if they start sharing, then I'll share. But if I ever do come across somebody who is just explaining everything away, and okay, I mean, that's valid. You can, it's, excuse me, it's always good to be a little skeptical and stuff like that. But if that's the case and they're just like shooting everything down that I'm saying, and, uh, I don't need them to validate my experience. And so if they want to continue to do that and just not really listen to what I'm saying, or they're like, oh, well, this is all BS. This is all, whatever. I'm just like, all right, well, I'll stop sharing with that person, and move on. Like they're entitled to their opinion. Again, I know what I experienced. I know what state of mind I was in, and yes, I am, like, again, I am a nurse, so I know they're like, when people are talking about, oh, I'm gonna pray the cancer away. Well, I know that's not gonna happen, but we're also very healthy, I feel like, skeptics. So when we see a video, we're not automatically going to 100% believe that video that we just saw is real. We're going to try and watch the video multiple times and see if there's a way that we can explain what we're seeing in that video, you know.
My favorite thing to do is when, especially some of our listeners will send us like, oh, did you see this creepy video? I'm like, all right, like, let's debunk it. And I love that they are sending us these weird videos, but sometimes, honestly, they're so creepy for my own peace of mind. I have to debunk it and make sure that it's not, something else. So, yeah, like Eric was saying, as much as we want to believe, we're very much still skeptics. But we also know that there's something unexplained happening, and, we don't have the answers to it, but it's there.
I mean, of course you have to. I mean, you've experienced it firsthand, even as children in the family home. And I suppose, some people won't understand you because they themselves haven't went through it, and it's a shame that, unless something happens to them, things like that are impossible. It really is a shame. We've just about reached an hour now, and we'll begin to start wrapping it up. But before we do, are there, over the years that you've been interested in the paranormal and researching it and engaging with it, has it influenced your take on life in any way? And are there any lessons that you've learned over the years that if somebody was just starting out in the paranormal, whether investigating it or moved into a house with the same sort of goings on that you've had, so any advice that you would give them based on your experience over the years?
I would say be respectful, because we talked about Ghost Adventures briefly, and that show bothers me quite a bit.
It's
just
almost
because
like
of the way Zach Baggins.
he's looking to pick a fight with some of them, isn't it? It's what it's like.
Yeah, and so that always kind of gets on my nerves. Or if people are like trespassing into these places because they think it, like, anything disrespectful like that. I don't know. I would say, treat the paranormal, whether you can see them or not, as if they're humans. Like, be kind, be respectful. I wouldn't want an attachment coming home with me. So why are you trying to, egg these things on? And just be smart about, especially in Texas, people, everyone has guns and firearms. So if you're trespassing or trying to sneak into places, you could get hurt, not because of a ghost, but because of human beings.
I mean,
so just be smart about
point.
just be smart about where you're going. If you're going to investigate, get permission, and most importantly, be kind and respectful to people, but also the spirits.
Yeah. I would probably say just intentions matter. So and I'm speaking also like just go in with good intentions. Like don't go in there uh you know be like Michelle said, I guess it falls into the be respectful kind of thing. Just, go in with good intentions. Anything that you're doing, uh, just always try and put a positive vibe out. If you believe in that, or if you want to, however you want to take that. And also, like, if you are trying to get into investigating or just in paranormal in general, a good dose of skepticism is fine.
Necessary.
Yes, because again, like, and I know you mentioned this on our podcast a little while ago, there's people out there that 100% believe everything that they see all the time, and that's not good either, because that doesn't help, further either field, in the UFO community, in the ghost community, whatever whatever it is, just 100%. And well, I'm not going to go there. Just 100% blindly believing in things is not good. You have to question things, and that's the only way that I feel that we're going to further any of these communities is by questioning things. And I am very thankful to a lot of the paranormal investigators that we've had on who have kind of had that same mentality, and I think we've also kind of picked up on that from them, and adopted that as well. I always feel like we were kind of that way, but it just, speaking with them kind of just really solidified that for us, and so that would be my advice, or what I want people to know about this. It's just your intentions matter, and just it's okay, and it's good to be a little skeptical.
It is, yeah. I mean, take the middle ground is how I approach it, and my investigators approach it as well. And I suppose, yes, in Texas, be respectful, particularly in people's property. Otherwise, you'll get a fistful of lead, or perhaps a ghost following you home.
Yeah.
I don't know which is worse, actually, if I'm honest. But yeah. Food for thought. Michelle, Eric, thank you so much for being on the show. Before you go, where can our listeners find and follow you?
So we do have a website. It's webelievedyou.com. We also have a Facebook page, which is the same, We Believe You. And on Instagram as well. We do have a Twitter, but we don't ever post on there anymore. So just Facebook and Instagram. And our website, you can listen to the podcast on the website or any major podcast listening site.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eric and Michelle Connor, all the way from Austin in Texas, and hosts of the We Believe You podcast. Listen, you two, thank you so much for being on the show. Have a great rest of the day, because I know it should just be starting for you over there. And I definitely look forward to speaking to you both soon.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What a way to see in the new year and get back to podcasting. A very interesting conversation was had with this excellent brother and sister team, Michelle and Eric Connor. Very, very good indeed. And I do hope to speak to them in the not too distant future, because it does sound like they've got a lot of stuff to tell. And I would recommend you to go check out their podcast series, We Believe You. I've listened to a handful of episodes already, and I must say the content is excellent. So, what have we got coming up in the next episode? Well, I will talk with publisher Damien Dumar and the book The Last Harvest. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable for people to listen to. It goes a little bit dark, and explains how the human population will face a cull at the hands of malevolent ETs. You don't want to miss this one. Listen, you've been listening to the Close Encounters podcast with me, Chris McMurray, and until next episode, have a good week.